Namaskar. In Swatantra Bharat 75, the genius of India as a key to the crisis of humanity. Today we have got with us a very distinguished speaker, expert speaker, Shri Jeevan Rao ji from Bangalore, a young and very energetic, dynamic, original researcher and Indic study scholar. He started this study from a very young age when he was engineering student, and just around age of 22 he started actually doing very serious studies and observations and deliberations on that. That's pretty wonderful because that's the age actually one should start studying India and her genius. And just one quotation I remember from Swami Vivekananda. He said that it is only the young and the fresh and unsmelled flowers which are offered on the feet of the mother, and such alone she receives. So that's a beautiful saying by Swami Vivekananda. He says that's the age when the mother needs your worship. I think Sri Jeevan Rao ji rightly understood it at the right time and took up this study. And his specialization is on timing or the chronology of Kali Yuga, especially taking from some scientific evidences and the scriptural evidences and astronomical and all. So, welcome to you, sir, on behalf of Vivekananda Prabodhini, Mumbai, and Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari. I welcome to this series. And I've seen your blogs. You have written many blogs, and they are mainly related with Kali Yuga, beginning of Kali Yuga, in fact, based on the Mahabharata evidence. Can you just summarize your findings at the beginning for our understanding? Can you just summarize it?
Sure. First of all, thanks a lot for hosting me here. I'm glad to be a part of this wonderful initiative. And coming to the answer for your question, the my summary can be divided into three parts. One is Mahabharata text is extremely robust in providing us its own tradition for Kali Yuga. Second part is according to Mahabharata text, Kali Yuga began on the last day of the war. And third part is Kaliyuga began on the day of Pusha Nakshatra. So, if you ask me to summarize my entire research in three sentences, this will be it. Kaliyuga began on the last day of the war and on Pusha Nakshatra.
Great. Do you have some sort of theory statement of this, and we'd like to know about that if there's this theory statement, and secondly, how you arrived at that, how you came to that theory statement.
Yeah. So, basically, my theory statement is Mahabharata text provides the source for events related to Mahabharata. So, I mean, how I arrived at this statement is so it's like basic common knowledge, right? So, we should go to Mahabharata text to research something about Mahabharata. So, what most of the folks do is while researching on Mahabharata, they look outside Mahabharata to uh, do the research on Mahabharata. So, while thinking about that, I came up with this idea that I should only focus my study basically on Mahabharata text.
Mahabharata was always your passion. You had the reading of that before also, or you started developing interest in that only after this query? Like just I'm
No,
asking.
I mean, process I followed is I followed the uh, process of approximation, like how we, I mean, in engineering, students will get to know, like we use a device known as vernier caliper or screw gauge. So what we do is while measuring anything, first we arrive at an approximate solution and then we arrive at precise solution. So even in my study, that's what I have done. So is my screen visible now?
Yes, Jivanji, we can see the first line, the beginning of Kali Yuga. That is
Yeah.
visible.
So the study is basically divided into three parts. First one is looking at the primary sources that are available for first day of Kali Yuga, like Surya Siddhanta, Aryabhatiya, Aihole inscription, or Sri Yukteswara Giri's Yuga theory, and our traditional knowledge for Kali Yuga. So once I went through these possible sources for Kali Yuga and I researched that and studied that. So then came the need to study the Puranic accounts for the first day of Kali Yuga. And Puranic accounts were basically can be divided into three parts. One is Puranic accounts for the first day of Kaliyuga, as in what was the first day? Like, was it the departure of Krishna from the planet, or was it the last day of the Kurukshetra war, or was it any on other day? And the second aspect was Puranic account for the Tithi on the first day of Kaliyuga. Like, what was the Tithi? I mean, in our Indian calendar, we always identify a day by nakshatra or Tithi. So that was the second aspect. And third aspect is the time interval between Mahapadmananda and Parikshit. So even, I mean, according to most of the Indic researchers, that's one of the crucial factors actually for dating Mahabharata war. And then comes the final piece of the puzzle, Mahabharata evidence for the first day of Kali Yuga. So we will go through all these steps as how my study progressed, and we will also arrive at the Mahabharata conclusion for the first day of Kali Yuga. So basically, if you go to Wikipedia or internet, and if you search the beginning of Kali Yuga, the first thing that you will see is, according to Surya Siddhanta, Kali Yuga began on February 18th, 3102 BCE. So now February, and it was 36 years after the Kurukshetra war, and Kali Yuga began with the passing away of Sri Krishna. So basically, there are two aspects for this February 3102 BC. One is the chronology aspect, which is 36 years after the Kurukshetra war, and the other one is astronomy aspect. That is, February 18 falls on the Ashwini Nakshatra. So basically, what this date signifies is Krishna passed away 36 years after the Kurukshetra war on Ashwini Nakshatra, and Kali Yuga began on Ashwini Nakshatra. Okay,
Your
so
subsequent lines are you showing, Jivanji? Because we are not able to see after the title.
yeah, I am not yet showing.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So now arises the question, is Surya Siddhanta really a primary source for these statements about Kali Yuga? The answer is actually no, because Surya Siddhanta deals with planetary motions and Yuga theory, etc. That's true. But there is no mention of Kali in the entire text of Surya Siddhanta. The Surya Siddhanta text basically starts with explaining that its author, Mayasura, obtained the text at the end of Krita Yuga. And also, we get to see multiple instances in Surya Siddhanta where it is said that the time of composition of Surya Siddhanta is actually the end of Krita Yuga and not the beginning of Kali Yuga. So now raises an important query. We all have heard it many times that according to Surya Siddhanta there is a setting for Kali Yuga which says that all the planets were at the beginning of Makara or Eris during the beginning of Kali Yuga. Is that the case? Actually, no. This is the Surya Siddhanta verse that many Indic scholars talk about. So you can clearly see there, it says, Asmin Krutayuga Syante Sarva Madhyagata Graha, which means at the end of Krita Yuga, all planets are in conjunction in the first of Aries. So basically, what this verse shows is Surya Siddhanta cannot be taken as a primary source for the beginning of Kali Yuga. What Surya Siddhanta is giving is a separate planetary settings for the end of Krita Yuga. So one possible primary source for Kali Yuga was dismissed by this preliminary study, and next comes Aryabhatiya. So or we can say that Aryabhatiya is in fact more popular than Surya Siddhanta when it comes to Kali Yuga source. And one of the primary statements from Aryabhatiya is this statement which says 360 times 60 years and one third of the yuga, or yeah, three yugas have passed since my birth, and I was 23 years old when this happened. So using this statement, our scholars have arrived at 499 AD for Aryabhatta and 3102 BC for Kaliyuga, right? But upon closer inspection, what we see is Aryabhatta is actually speaking of an entirely different yuga system. He is not talking of our Krita, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga. So this is the yuga that Aryabhatta is speaking of. So what basically this verse means is, first half, there are four parts in a yuga, and the first part is called Utsarpini, and the second half is called Apasarpini, and in the middle there is the part of yuga is called Susama, and in the beginning and in the end there is Dushama. So what he means is, the first half is known as ascending cycle and the second half is known as descending cycle. So you can also find a parallel in this yuga model with Swami Yukteswara Giri's yuga model. So it was not his out of the box or original idea of Swami Yukteswara Giri when he proposed ascending and descending yuga theory. He took it from Aryabhata's yuga model. So even in Aryabhatiya, there is no mention of Kali Yuga, or as a matter of fact, there is no mention of either Krita, Treta, Dwapara, or Kali. So it will be quite a stretch actually to try to find Kali Yuga or the beginning of Kali Yuga in Aryabhatiya. So now the primary sources, which which we believe to be the primary sources, turned out that were not primary sources at all. As a matter of fact, they were not even talking of Kali Yuga. So then, what else can be a primary source for us, which would take us to the beginning of Kali Yuga? And so, one more important pieces of evidence that we have is Puranas. So I will take a quick pause here. Narendra ji, if you have any questions, you can ask it.
No, we have just started now understanding like your part of your study. So what I gather is Aryabhatiya as well as the Siddhanta, according to you, I think as you rightly said, they may not be mentioning Kali Yuga at all. And then in our previous preliminary talk also, I was asking you this Yukteswar Giri's model, which is actually making the total time of the whole cycle quite smaller as compared to the Puranic or the ancient cycles of Aryabhatiya. So yes, let me just wait for the whole thing and maybe then I will get to some question. But this looks to be two, three models which are coming. All of them are talking different time zones. Am I right? They're talking of different time scales.
Yeah, correct. First, there are um, two types of yugas actually. One is million year yuga, which Puranas talks of. Puranas and also the astronomy science texts like Surya Siddhanta and Aryabhatiya also talks of that. And then there are 1,000 years yuga cycle. Our Mahabharata actually talks of 1,000 year yuga cycle. So Mahabharata is like, it's a 12,000 year yuga cycle, Mahabharata. Whereas the Puranas talks of 4.32 million years yuga cycle. So now let's look at what Puranas have to say about Kali Yuga. So Puranic evidence can be divided into three parts, as I said in the beginning. One is Puranic account for first day of Kali Yuga. So for that, the most popular account is from Bhagavat Puran, which says Kali Yuga began on the day Krishna returned to his abode in heaven, and that is repeated in multiple Puranas like Vishnu Puran, Brahma Puran, Brahmanda Puran, Matsya Puran, and Skanda Puran. But that is not it. We also have other accounts from the Puranas which says that Kali Yuga began on the last day of the war. and the most important Puranas which say this are Skanda Puran and Harivamsha Puran. So we will also revisit the Harivamsha Puran later because it's not just any other Purana. It's widely considered as a appendix for Mahabharata text. Then the next important aspect is the Tithi or Nakshatra for the first day of Kali Yuga. And in almost most of the Puranas, Kali Yuga is called as Pushya or Tishya Yuga. What's more fascinating is it's not only Puranas, even Ramayana also calls Kali Yuga as Tishya Yuga in one place. And these are the Puranas: Skanda Purana, Brahmanda Purana, Matsya, Padma, even Vayu Purana also calls Kali Yuga as Pushya or Tishya Yuga. But surprisingly, even though we find this nomenclature for Kali Yuga in multiple Puranas, we don't find a reason why it's called as Pushya Yuga or Tishya Yuga. They are like, it's like a taken, I mean a known knowledge that Kali Yuga is known as Pushya Yuga. They have given us this information without any explanation. The next aspect of Purana evidence is the time interval between Parikshit, I mean the grandson of Arjuna, to Mahapadmananda. And even this time interval is also not a constant. It varies from 1050 years to 3310 years, from Vishnu Purana to Skanda Purana. And in fact, even in Vishnu Purana and Bhagavat Puran, there are multiple intervals. So in one place Vishnu Purana gives 1050, in the other place the same Vishnu Purana gives 1500 as the interval between Parikshit and Mahapadmananda. Same is the case with Bhagavat also. It gives 1150 years at one place and 1500 at the other place. Whereas Skanda Purana gives 3310 years as an interval between Parikshit and Mahapadmananda. So, in spite of all these many various claims, we still have some more Puranic evidence for the Kali Yuga, which does not match or gel with any of these evidence. Like within Skanda Purana, we have multiple traditions for Kali Yuga, like this one. As we saw earlier, Skanda Purana says at one place that Kali Yuga began on the last day of the war. But Skanda Purana also says that Krishna and Balaram were born after the advent of Kali Yuga. Or like we saw Skanda Purana saying that Kali Yuga is known as Pushya Yuga. But Skanda Purana also has the recording that Kali Yuga began on Krishna Paksha 13th day of Bhadrapada month. And in Garuda Purana, we have the information that Buddha was born at the junction of Kali Yuga. Now, this might mean two things. One is Buddha might have born at the junction of the beginning of Kali Yuga or at the end junction of Kali Yuga. So that means if this particular statement does not match with any of our present traditional beliefs actually. And in Harivamsha, like as we saw before, one statement from Harivamsha is Kaliyuga began on the last day of the war, and the other statement in Harivamsha is Kaliyuga had set in already by the time of Kalayavana, when Krishna takes him to Muchukunda Muni's cave and kills him. So that's one more instance. So as we saw, there are multiple traditions recorded in the Puranas, and in sometimes within a same Purana there are multiple traditions. So how can we decide which tradition to choose out of all this? We cannot do that randomly. So one way, or in fact I would rather say the only way to do that is by looking at the evidence from the Mahabharata text, and then we can choose which evidence matches with the Mahabharata text, and we can use that evidence from the Purana as a corroboration. So the final part or the final stage of my study was turning back to Mahabharata. And so Mahabharata evidence is like there are at least I have gathered more than 75, uh, close to 90 evidence for Kaliyuga, and they can be divided into three parts. One is Yuganta evidence, like Yuganta or Yugakshaya evidence, and the other one is chronology evidence, and the other one is astronomy evidence. So let's, as I said earlier, the entire study is modeled like a vernier caliper. We started with the premise, that is to finding the beginning of Kali Yuga, and then we looked for primary source which can help us to narrow down our research. And using that process, now we have arrived at Mahabharata text, and now using Yuganta evidence, we will try to further narrow down our area of search among the 18 parvas. And using chronology and astronomy evidence, we will find the precise location for the beginning of Kali Yuga, that is the day and nakshatra for the beginning of Kali Yuga. So coming to Yuganta evidence, there are 18 parvas in Mahabharata, from Adi Parva to Swargarohana Parva, and we have 90 plus, as I said, evidence for Kali Yuga. And the Yuganta or Yugakshaya evidences are 70 plus in Mahabharata. So basically, Yuganta or Yugakshaya means the nomenclature or the etymology of them is end of a yuga or vein of a yuga, Yuganta and Yugakshaya. And also they are used multiple times like a metaphor or as an analogy during war scenes. But what is interesting is out of these 70 plus Yuganta or Yugakshaya statements, 60 are only concentrated around the war parvas, like from Bhishma Parva till Stri Parva. And the interesting part of the Yuganta evidence is we can divide them into three parts. The Yuganta evidence. One is pre-war Parvas, that is Udyoga Parva, and during war Parvas, that is from Bhishma till Shalya Parva, and then post-war Parva, that is from Sautik Parva and Stri Parva. So these three parts are known as specific Yuganta statements. So in these 15 plus specific Yuganta statements, we see that, I mean, we get the statements like in Udyoga Parva, we get to see that Yuganta is like a impending phenomena. The characters of Mahabharata are talking like the Yuganta is about to arrive or the Yuganta is at the door. Like when Arjuna warns Ulucha that when in the war he kills the enemies like a fire at Yuganta, Dhritarashtra and his sons will repent. Or like when Dhritarashtra fears that Bhishma will kill his all his like Bhima will kill all his sons like a fire at Yuganta. So there is that sense of anticipation in the pre-war parvas. And jump to the war parvas, we see the references like the Yuganta is happening. The Yuganta is here. Like when on 14th day of the war, Dhritarashtra laments to Sanjaya that the fall of Bhishma and the death of Drona is overturning his senses like a change of yuga. And also the Jayadrat is compared to moon attacked by 5 planets at the end of yuga. And post-war, post 18th day, the I mean exactly after the 18th day, the Yuganta references get into a past tense mode. Like on the 18th day night, Ashwatthama kills the Upapandavas and who is that Shikandi and Drishtadyumna. So at that very moment, the past tense Yuganta references starts. Like they say that, I mean, Mahabharata say that Ashwatthama looked like the fire at the Yuganta after it had killed all the survivors. And in Stri Parva, Gandhari visits Kurukshetra field. Uh, at that time, she sees Bhishma and laments that he is looking like a son that had fallen at the Yuganta. And mother of Burishrava, whom Satyaki has killed, so she laments to his husband that you are lucky that you are not here to witness this change of Yuga or this end of Yuga. So, using Yuganta and Yugakshaya allusions, we can see that pre-war Parvas see Yuganta as an upcoming event. War Parvas see Yuganta or Yugakshaya as an ongoing event. And post-war Parva see Yuganta as an bygone event. So now out of the 18 Mahabharata Parvas, we can narrow down our search, or we can say with confidence that Yuganta happened sometime during this 18 days of Mahabharata war. And using our further chronology and astronomy evidence, we can arrive at the precise location that it was 18th day of the war when this final transition from Dwapara to Kali took place. So we will move on to chronology and astronomy evidence. Before that, do you have any queries, Narendraji?
No, right now this is going fine. Please go ahead.
Okay. So this chronology evidence, what it basically makes is there are around 12 to 13 chronology evidence, out of which I have presented here only major 4. So what chronology evidence does is it basically gives us a timeline from 12 to 13 years before the Kurukshetra war till the 18th day or the last day of the Kurukshetra war for the arrival of Kaliyuga. In fact, the entire narration of the Mahabharata starts with the statement of rishis saying that at the interval of Dwapara and Kali, the two armies of Pandavas and Kauravas met at Kurukshetra. So basically, that statement of Adiparva sets the tone for the entire epic, where we are looking forward for the arrival of Kali. And the first chronology evidence comes in Sabha Parva, where they have just decided to play a game of Dyuta, and Vidura gets to know about this plan. And as soon as Vidura gets to know that they are about to play this game of dice, he knows that the arrival of Kali is at hand. So that means Kali has not yet arrived, but he is anticipating the arrival of Kali. So this is at least 13 years before the war. So what it shows is 13 years before the war, it was not yet Kali Yuga. And then the game of Dyuta happens, and Pandavas will lose that game, and they go to their Vanvas. And in Vanvas, Bhima happens to meet Hanuman. So during their conversation, Hanuman tells to Bhima that in a very short time, Kali Yuga is about to arrive. So this shows that even during their Vanavas period, Kali Yuga had not yet begun. It was still a event to the they were anticipating in the future. And now their Pandavas complete their Vanavas, and Udyoga Parva events of Udyoga Parva starts to happen. And 1 month before the Kurukshetra war, when the armies of Pandavas start to leave for Kurukshetra, Yudhishthira laments to Bhima and Arjuna that even after trying so hard, we have failed to prevent this war, and soon this Kali will be upon us. So even 1 month before the Kurukshetra war, Kaliyuga is still in a future tense. And then one day before the war, when Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya are in a conversation, Dhritarashtra asks Sanjaya about the types of yugas and lifespan of man in different yugas. So while explaining, Sanjaya says that, this conversation is actually happening just one day before the war. That at present it is Dwapara, and people live for 2000 years. So what we see from this till now, this chronology evidence is that starting from 13 years before the war till one day before the war, it was still Dwapara. Kaliyuga had not yet begun. And now the war starts and 10th day comes. So from 10th day, we we get to know that there was a final period of transition from Dwapara to Kali. How do we get to know that? Because Krishna, during Krishna Karna Samvad that happened in Udyoga Parva, Krishna actually warns Karna that when he declines his offer to join the Pandava party, Krishna warns that once you see in the battlefield Arjuna fighting the enemies, or Yudhishthira, who is known for his yagna or japa tap, holding weapons, or when you see Bhima drinking the blood of Dushasan, then you will not see Krita, Treta, Dwapara. So the main interesting part of this statement of Krishna is he explicitly says when you see in the battlefield. So Karna enters the battlefield only after the fall of Bhishma, which is from the 10th day. So from 10th day, he won't see Krita, Treta, Dwapar or any Yuga till also the 17th day. That is when Bhima kills Dushasan and drinks his blood. So with this Krishna statement, we get to know that the final stages of transition happened from 10th day of the Mahabharata war till 17th day. And then on the 18th day, there was a mace fight between Duryodhan and Bhima, and Bhima broke the thigh bones of Duryodhan, and Balrama thought that as what is it, deceit or cheating, and he wanted to punish Bhima. At that time, Krishna, trying to pacify Balarama, says that know that Kali Yuga has begun, and know that it's not something wrong that Bhima has done, so please forgive him. So using chronology evidence, we see that we get to see, we get the track of arrival of Kali from 12 years before the war till the arrival of Kali on the 18th day of the war. So now as I said in the beginning, there are two pieces in this puzzle. One is the day of arrival of Kali, and the other one is Nakshatra on the day of arrival of Kali. So one piece of puzzle is solved with the help of Mahabharata, that Kali Yuga arrived on the 18th day of the war. So we still have one more puzzle, which is the astronomy evidence. So let's see what the astronomy evidence says. Astronomy evidence. We also saw in the Puranas that majority of the Puranas actually name Kali Yuga as Pusha Yuga, and in fact, it's not even only limited to Puranas. Even Ramayana also names Kali Yuga as Pusha Yuga, but the reason for that nomenclature is absent in almost all the Vedic texts, except luckily for us in Mahabharata. In Mahabharata Shanti Parva, during the Narayaniya section, where Bhishma is recollecting or reciting the events happened in Satyayuga, uh, we see a statement from Narayana which says that Kali Yuga will arrive on Pusha Nakshatra. So using that one single statement is actually the answer for the questions raised by the Puranas, the entire texts of Puranas or Ramayana regarding the naming of Kaliyuga as Pushayuga. So that is an explicit statement which says that Kaliyuga will arrive on Pusha Nakshatra. And so, using our chronology evidence and our astronomy evidence, we get to arrive at the conclusion that Kali Yuga arrived on the 18th day of the Kurukshetra war, and the nakshatra on the 18th day of the war was Pusha Nakshatra. So now Mahabharata text is actually extremely robust in giving us this conclusion. There are hardly any contradicting evidence which challenges this conclusion. But what's more interesting is the even the appendix of Mahabharata, which is Harivamsha, is pretty explicit in giving us that the information that Kaliyuga began on the last day of the war. So in the first book and 53rd chapter of Harivamsha, we get the statement that now Ashwatthama has killed the Upapandavas who were sleeping. So Harivamsha says that when this cruel deed happens, the story of third Dwapara Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, will come to a close. And when Ashwatthama disappears, or that's when he runs away from that scenario, from that scene, the dreadful Yuga of Maheshwara, that is the Kali Yuga, will begin. So this is pretty explicit and clear corroboration for the 70 plus Mahabharata evidence that we just saw. That is the Yuganta evidence, the chronology evidence, and the astronomy evidence, which again points towards the last day of the war and Pusha Nakshatra as the beginning of Kali Yuga. So I basically uh, explained the Mahabharata evidence for the beginning of Kali Yuga. I will take a bit pause here before continuing. Do you have any queries?
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful and very detailed, you can say, shows the detailing in your study also. Uh, and different shlokas from different parvas you have taken up and trying to, bring out the idea that, or rather, evidences that it must have happened from the 18th day of Mahabharata, if I got it correctly. And then you also connected it with the nakshatras and that the why it is called Pushya Yuga and all that part.
Yeah,
One point I just wanted to see as a layman, I'm asking now, and then I'll also put some of my questions which are connected with a little bit of my background in studying this. So one may now try to realize as a layman listening that there are many evidences in Mahabharata, many evidences in Puranas, many evidences are also given by acharyas, and especially our sort of now coming to the conclusion that it is possible to relate it with the Mahabharata war, connect with the Mahabharata war. How do you see the its connection now? Again, if we want to just correlate it or start corroborating it with the Puranas or Acharyas, is there any now possibility of connecting it?
yeah. In fact, now what I just showed, right, that Kali Yuga began on the last day of the war. This fact was actually identified by many traditional acharyas, like Madhvacharya, Sri Madhvacharya in his magnum opus, Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya, has explicitly said that the moment the thigh bones of Duryodhana was broken, Kali Yuga started. And even our ISKCON movement, Srila Prabhupada ji, even he in his commentary on Bhagavad Puran said that Kali Yuga began soon after the Mahabharata war, which is basically uh, the breaking of thigh bone actually indicates the end of Mahabharata war. So even he basically points towards the 18th day of the war as beginning of Kali Yuga. But the reason why they have not questioned the traditional date, or the traditional date, in traditional date, Kaliyuga begins on the Ashwini Nakshatra. As I said, February 3102 BC is on Ashwini Nakshatra. So the reason why they have not challenged it, because as I said, we don't get an answer why Kali Yuga is known as Pushya Yuga in any of the Puranas. It is only in Mahabharata, and only one verse in Mahabharata that actually says that Kali Yuga will arrive on Pushya Nakshatra. So it was this missing information that has led to this sustained belief that it was Kali Yuga began on 3102 BC. The moment we get to know that Kali Yuga will arrive on Pushya Yuga, the we can the questions will automatically be raised on the Ashwini Nakshatra date of Kali Yuga. I mean the traditional date for Kali Yuga.
Yeah, but there is one more thing one may like to understand, Jivanji. As a query,
Hmm.
Mahabharata. When we base something on Mahabharata or Purana or commentaries by acharyas, one of the common issue is which edition we are going to refer as the standard edition or the authentic edition, because especially Mahabharata or text like this has been encyclopedic.
Mm.
Many things have been added, in the process of
Mm.
time.
Mm.
All of us know it was originally Jay, which was a very compact uh, text which was written by Vyasa, and then further it got added up by his disciples in the process of time, and that then it became that magnum opus of the Mahakavya. Now,
Uh,
one
yeah.
question I'm just asking for knowledge is this: same
Mm.
happens with the Puranas also, because Puranas, like
Mm.
major Puranas, have been edited and further added over a period of time.
Mm.
Will it make a, when someone like this studying, when you are studying this or trying to put your point of views, which are
Mm.
quite after a lot of study we can
Mm.
see it very well, but will it have this particular question from someone that which edition of Mahabharata you are referring as the authentic edition? Is it possible that you are referring something which was
Mm-hmm.
possibly was not in the uh,
Mm.
earlier edition or the latter edition? Is that
Mm.
problem can come when we are basing something like this?
Yeah. Is my video on?
Yes.
Okay. So it's actually a very good question, and I would like to clear one thing first. Okay. So the query regarding Jaya, Bharata, and Mahabharata, right? So the answer for that lies in Mahabharata. So basically, Jaya, the 8,000 verse that's called Jaya, is actually the uh, curiosity arising verse which Vyas Dev has inserted in the text. So these 8,000 verses, common people or common folks cannot understand it so easily. So it is these 8,000 verse are called as Jaya, and the 24,000 verse that's called as Bharata is the crux of Mahabharata story without the upakates, or the we get many upakathas, right, in Mahabharata.
True.
So the crux of the story without upakathas are known as Bharata. Now that is the 24,000 verse, and the total the Mahabharata text in its entirety with the 8,000 curiosity verse, 24,000 core verse, and the upakathas are known as Mahabharata. So it's basically it's not the step by step process. It's like within Mahabharata we have these three categories of verse. And coming to your question, like the version which I have used, I have used 3 to 4 versions. One is Bandarkar's critical edition and Gita Press edition, and I have referred to Krishna Mohan Ganguly's translation, and we also have a translation in Kannada. So basically, what I have presented here is the filtered or synthesized version from all these 4 versions. And I should say, honestly, I did not find much contradiction in any of these versions. You can basically reproduce the same that I have researched using any of these versions.
That makes it really very robust, because that is what I was looking for. That because when a critical analysis, especially now we know this type of subjects will be always subjected to certain pre-decided, preoccupied
Yeah,
ideas, that
notions.
how it can be so long. So let us try to now refute that. So one possible question may occur is this. That's why I asked it.
Yeah.
That was my point of view. Not that, of course, I knew that you must have referred many versions, but this good that you explicitly told that four
Mm.
versions are actually giving the same. That makes it really more, you can say, increases
Yeah,
robustness of the argument which we are trying to make.
correct.
That's why the question was. And then, of course, that is connected with the second question. The corollary of that is the contradictions which we see in different possible outcomes of that. But you just now you answered it saying that there is not much contradiction, and
Mm.
it appears that most of them are coming to the same point. Am I right?
Mm.
There is
Yeah,
not internal contradictions are not many.
correct.
Yeah.
There are no contradictions like what we saw in Puranas.
So uh, then what about just another query of this? We all know the famous Ayhole inscription,
Mm.
which is many times it is quoted whenever
Mm.
somebody talks of Kaliyuga, and
Mm.
that is pretty in the latter time of the history it has come. So it
Mm.
is, and it is a in actual you can say evidence from the our architecture or sculpture evidence,
Mm.
we can say the evidence
Yeah.
actually the rocks, that makes it little different from the scriptural evidence, so to say. And in that case, I will inscription is giving us the Mahabharata and the Kali Yuga, that whole thing. When it says that it is 3000, I mean 102.
Mm.
That is
Mm.
the beginning of Kali Yuga, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, traditional
So
date.
how do you see this particular evidence from the Aihole inscription
Mm.
and your study? How do you correlate this or find the connection with this?
Yeah, there is a very good question, I must say, and there is a very curious link to Aihole inscription and Aryabhatiya. Because in Aryabhatiya we get to see that it's 3600 years from Bharata. We get to see that statement in Aryabhatiya. And even in Aihole inscription, we see a similar statement that it's 3700 and some years since Bharata Dahavadita. So Aihole does not say Mahabharata or Kaliyuga. Aihole uses the word Bharata Dahavadita. So this gives a clue that it's somewhat linked to Aryabhatiya. And we saw in Aryabhatiya that Aryabhatiya is not discussing about our Krita Yuga traditions or Yuga system. Aryabhatiya is discussing about Jain Yuga system. Right? The Sushama, Dushama, and ascending and descending are a part of Jain Yuga system. So now let's see what Aihole is. I mean, now let's see the context where this Aihole inscription is written. So Aihole inscription is present inside a in Aihole on Meguti hill, and the Aihole inscription is present inside a Jain temple. And the Aihole, the first very starting verse of Aihole is about the praise to Jina, the god of Jains. The poet who wrote the Aihole inscription was a Jain, Ravi Kirti. So, using this and the fact that it has used the statement Bharata Dahavadita, which means the battle of Bharatas or the challenge of Bharata, it actually shows that in Jain context, the Aihole inscription, there are chances. I mean, this is my hypothesis, you can say it. There are chances that the Bharata that Aihole is speaking of might not be our Mahabharata. It might as well be the Bharata of Jains, the Bharata Bahubali battle that we know, right? The Aihole might be speaking of the Bharata Bahubali battle. And even the 3102 BC that the researchers have arrived at, even that is not divide of controversy. they have incorporated few changes, in fact multiple changes in the original manuscript to arrive at 3102 BC. So that would be my answer for the query on Ihole.
Fantastic. I mean, we are thoroughly sort of, enjoying your discussion and your entire study and the deliberation. And as I said in the beginning, trying to get that thing right in the early age of your life, along with your IT career, of course, is really fantastic and should inspire more people to go towards Indology. And as we always say, study of India doesn't, require you to have a formal background from, arts or humanities or Indian culture. So anyone can take into it who has got passion. Incidentally, I'm also from engineering, so it seems that engineers, I may say actually, I mean, just a question I thought after talking to you, talking to Nilesh and all other people I'm talking, whether our engineering background somehow gives us a bit of a edge over when we take this type of studies, because I see a peculiar processing or a sort of thought process which goes
Mm,
into my other friends who are not from engineering will
mm,
curse me for this particular bias, but I'm just in a lighter note. I'm saying that maybe we are grilled so much in our engineering years
yeah.
that probably maybe we are equipped to do some sort of complex things like this. I think. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, even I agree with you on that. So we see our daily lives as a part of our experiment, scientific experiment. So even when we try to do any research, we try to follow the procedures that we used to follow in our physics labs. So
true.
that's basically the art of approximation that I said.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I agree on you.
It
Engineering
helps. It
does help.
helps. I think so, and to think in a rational way. And you also gave example of 1 year in the beginning, that how
Yeah,
you try to arrive at this type of things. And somewhere a process is somewhere we get this process maybe. When
yeah.
we talk of, yeah, I mean, when we talk of this, since you are from IT, I'm just trying to ask, you see some possibilities of connecting with the recent happenings, especially the digital age evolution or computer evolution or all these things which have happened in recent times.
Mm-hmm.
Why I'm asking, let me elaborate this question a little more to get this. Whenever we talk of chronology of Kali Yuga or when the Kali Yuga began, most of the people have a, I'm not saying we people, but many people, the traditional people have a negative connotation when we talk of Kali Yuga. In fact,
Mm,
there is a saying also that in the Krita Yoga or the Satya Yoga, it was standing on four legs, dharma, and then it was
mm,
a three legs, then it became two legs, and ultimately Kali Yuga one leg. Trying to show that how there is deterioration or the you know
mm,
sort
mm,
of a descending curve in the whole operation,
mm,
and now should be supplemented with the ascending curve. In fact, you also had a mention of that when we said that you said that there is a in the whole cycle of it there is a descent and there is an ascent.
mm,
Many people have talked about that.
mm,
So Kali Yuga seems to be, now let me try to understand from you. It seems to be that there is a popular notion that सब कुछ खराब होला अभी कलयुग आ गया घोर कलयुग आ गया like that we always say people talking. What does
mm,
it mean that Kaliyuga is some sort of trying to show that things are going to become worse and worse? In
mm,
fact, some of the things which were mentioned in this talk also, I was just listening, and there was, of course, not explicit, but there was a sort of a somewhere a tone in the characters of Mahabharata also when they said this is going to happen because it is Kali Yuga now. This is
yeah.
one way of looking at the Kali Yuga. That something now worse, or you can say the destructive
Mm,
things are going to happen, and be ready for some
mm,
unforeseen like that.
mm,
But is it that, or it also means something else? I'm just putting this question after a lot of some
mm,
thinking on this, because I believe that there is something more to that. Because okay, let me try to put it further to that. Once you answer this, because there were some connecting questions to that, if you allow me.
mhm. Yeah.
What do you feel, first of all, this notion that Kali Yuga is something going bad now, or worst thing of descent going to happen?
Mm.
Is that the correct idea?
Yeah. This actually links. uh, very well with the convo that we just had before this, that engineering helping us, the engineering study helping us in our research, right? So you might be knowing our second law of thermodynamics, that the entropy will always increase, the disorder of the universe will always increase according to even our laws of physics, thermodynamics.
True.
So that's basically our yuga system, right? Everything was perfect in krita yuga, and it started to deteriorate, and it will reach its lowest point in kali yuga. The disorder
So,
keeps on increasing.
yeah, and dharma is the order, the cosmic order. That's why dharma
Yeah,
goes becoming lesser and lesser protected or supported because the disorder is increasing.
correct.
Yeah. Why I was asking is this: there are multiple reasons, in fact, and I have been myself very curious about this subject for quite some time, especially when I read Yukteswar Giri's part and Sri Aurobindo's part about
Mm,
the time cycle
mm,
and other things, and of course other studies, as you said, other acharyas and other things. So what I saw, one is the difference between the different things. That's okay. But second thing is, even in this point also, whether Kali Yuga is the total fall or it is also something else in that,
mm,
it brings us to some different point, because okay, Mahabharata's end was marked with certain disasters, or
mm,
sort of, even we can say, some sort of completely disorderly things at the end.
mm,
But after Mahabharata, we see somewhere in 300 BC, around that, there is a very very well developed
prosperous time.
town planning and the process of our entire civilization in terms of Sindhu Saraswati Sanskriti, Harappa,
Mm,
Mohenjo-daro. Now we see the first rise there of 3000, then 1500, and thereafter also we see some really wonderful things happening around. If you see the time from the 600 BC to 200 BC also, it's all Gautam Buddha and Mahavira,
mm,
followed by around Mauryan this
mm,
thing. Okay, and
mm,
thereafter we come to another things like Satvans and the other people, including the Gupta period, which
mm.
is, and in south we have the great Cholas and Sheras, Pandya and Pallava.
Yeah.
So uh, it appears that these, and now I'm just trying to understand it in a different point of view. If it was fall and degeneration and going towards the downturn, but there is about 1,000 years or 1,200 years which are looking to be grand peak in that whole era, which
Mm,
was rightly known as the golden period of Indian
mm,
history.
mm, mm,
So there was a rise during that time, right?
mm, mm,
And then after that, again about 1200, around 12th century, 13th century, and all, again we start falling down. And then
yeah.
until the 18th century, 19th century, there's a complete fall. And 19th century end, again there is a rise in the terms of Indian Renaissance. I'm just
Mm,
trying to put it in a different possibility for your view. Now Mahabharata's Kurukshetra war, we all know that it may be around, is it 4,500 or 5,000 BC, around
uh,
that? 4,000,
yeah. 5,561. 5561.
5,561 as per the astronomical and other
Mm,
scriptural data.
yeah.
After that, suppose we say that there has to be a complete, downturn of all these disorderly things, or
Mm,
the you can say things which cannot be so great
mm,
and all. But in that
mm,
also, there are some smaller versions of going up and down. This is what a person may get perplexed by that. That how it's not. It doesn't seem to be just a, and that's why I was trying to tell you that it doesn't seem to be descend and
be
complete
only
descend. It
bad.
can be some
Mm,
ascent also, and that accent
mm,
probably must have started little before. So why I'm saying, there is also a theory where Kali Yuga has got two parts. One was the part of the descent, and one is a part of the ascent.
mm,
And that, if you take the complete part of Kali Yuga, the part of descent was over,
mm.
and then the part of ascent has also started. Will you like to comment something on this other point of views also?
Correct. So, the descending and ascending Kaliyuga concept actually originated from Swami Yukteswaragiri, his theory of yugas. Basically, both of them, I mean, in a intellectual perspective, both of them are not wrong. I mean, our Krita Yuga system, like as I said, follows the uh, thermodynamics laws that the disorder increases. Whereas Yukteswara Giri's or Aryabhata's Yuga theory follows the nature pattern that we see, like in a month. for 15 days, moon will go through a waning phase, and in the other 15 days, he starts to get a waxing phase, right? So that's basically the Yuga. I mean, that summarizes the Yuga theory of Yukteswara Giri and Aryabhatiya. There will be a descending cycle and there will be an ascending cycle, correct? And also the regarding the small patches of good times that you mentioned, the answer for that lies in Mahabharata. Yudhishthira asks a question to Bhishma. So if a king is in ruling in Kaliyuga, so what will be the uh, duty, I mean, what is the what lies in the hands of that king? If he is ruling in Kaliyuga, it is bound that the subjects will suffer. So Bhishma answers at that time that Raja Kalasya Karanam, the king ruling will define the Yuga on which the subjects are living. So, like, we also get a statement in Ramayana also, that when Rama was ruling, he brought Krita Yuga in Treta Yuga. Or when Bhishma was taking care of Chitravirya, Vichitravirya, and then Pandu and Dhritarashtra, he brought Satyayuga in Dwapara Yuga. So the patches of good times that you mentioned in middle of dark times might be a example of Raja Kalasya Karanam.
That was really very, I guess that was a very wonderful answer, a very innovative way of trying to put, that yes, Raja Kalasya Karanam. We must note that. That explains why there are smaller, possibly bright spots even into the overall downturn.
Is independent of Kali Yuga, whereas the beginning of Kali Yuga is dependent on the dating of Mahabharata war. So what this basically means is, majority of our Indic researchers, what they have done is, they have taken 3102 BC as the year of Kali Yuga, and using back calculation, they have arrived at 3138 BC as the year of Mahabharata war. But using our research, we have seen that it's actually on the 18th day of the Mahabharata war, the Kali Yuga began. So to arrive at a date for the beginning of Kali Yuga, we should be knowing the proper date for the Mahabharata war. And then I I went on searching for a claim of Mahabharata war where the 18th day was or should be on Pusha Nakshatra, as we saw from Mahabharata text. And I came across the research of Sri Nilesh Ok. Uh, Probably even he will feature on this channel. So he has followed the same technique that I have done, which is the art of approximation. So he started from Arundhati Vasishta observation, which gave him a 7,500 years of interval, and then Bhishma Nirvana evidence will further narrow down that into a 3,000 year interval, and continuing the on by collecting 300 plus astronomy evidence from the Mahabharata text, using planetary observations and phases of moons, and using our observation of last day of the war as Pusha Nakshatra, we arrive at 2nd November 5561 BCE as the first day of Kali Yuga. So that summarizes my or concludes my research on Kali Yuga. So quickly to summarize, we saw that Surya Siddhanta is not a primary source for Kali Yuga. Surya Siddhanta basically talks about Kritanta, or the end of Krita Yuga, and we saw Aryabhatiya talks of non-Krita Yuga system, means it's sort of talking like Jain Yuga system. And we saw that Puranas, especially Skanda Purana, has collated varying traditions for Kali Yuga. And in any case, however we see it, Kali Yuga in one way or the other is related to personalities of Mahabharata. So that actually points us to reach out to Mahabharata to research on Kaliyuga. So I took Mahabharata text as the primary source for events related to Mahabharata. And according to Mahabharata, as we saw, based on 90 plus evidences, Kali Yuga began on the last day of Mahabharat war on Pusha Nakshatra, that is on 2nd November 5561 BC. That concludes my talk. Thank you, Narendra ji.
Thank you so much, Jeevanji. As I said, it was actually very heartening and very educative as well as thought-provoking session, which I'm sure many people will be now sort of thinking of studying more and trying to delve deeper into all our scriptures, especially scripture like Mahabharata. And I read somewhere it is very rightly mentioned that Mahabharata is the mind of India. In whatever you want to know about India, Mahabharata gives you something about that. In fact, Vyas himself was also very confident about that. One can say to the extent of being, you know,
Encyclopedia.
omniscience type. He used to say that Vyasut Shishtam Jagat Sarvam. I have given all the answers in this, everything you find here. And today we saw one more example that we see one more answer coming right from Mahabharata. So we have to go down to the great genius of our forefathers, rishis, and people like Maharishi Vyas, and also congratulate you for this effort you have taken and the research you have been doing for finding out this particular problem of Kali Yuga, which is absolutely intriguing and very important problem for any Indology student and researcher. Thank you so much for joining us and giving your important inputs on this. I thank you on behalf of Vivekananda Kendra, Vivekananda Prabhudini, and wish that we remain associated and keep continuing our work in more and more ways. Thank you
Sure,
so much.
Narendra ji. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It was
Thank
an
you.
honor.
Thank you.
Hello.